The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Hope you had a great weekend. That like cook crack. So this is going to be a really hectic week. It's going to be a really busy week. That's the way we like it. The combine is this week. And I've always said, for me, the combine is a mile marker of sorts of the offseason really starting to take off. Once the combine hits, the calendar usually turns to March, which means the league year and the start of it is right around the corner. Also, the combine, to me, kicks off. I know Mobile and the Senior Bowl, they always say the draft starts here. For me, this is when the draft process really hits hyperdrive, right? Combine, after the combine, immediately thereafter, you get pro days. And as soon as you go into that pro day circuit, now you're getting individual meetings with teams. And then we start documenting those. And then we get the conversations about where guys are going to go. Then the mock drafts really start to heat up. And before you know it, boom, it's April, late April, and the draft is upon us. So everything starts to move, it feels like, and fast forward once the combine gets here. And so we've officially gotten to the combine week. We're going to obviously cover all of the combine here. And I always tell you guys, I cover the combine. I watch the combine, so you don't have to. Trust me, you're not missing anything if you're not watching the combine. Spare yourself the frustration of the combine, the slow nature of it, the monotonous nature of it. You've seen one combine, you've seen them all. It's a terrible watch. I always tell you that, but it's a necessary evil for someone like myself. You don't have to watch it. And if you don't have to watch it, then don't. But what the combine symbolizes is more important than the actual event itself, right? It's the decision makers all getting together in one locale. So you're going to have just about every important decision maker that exists in the NFL in one spot. You're going to have a ton of agents trying to negotiate deals, trying to facilitate trades. So you see this every year, right? The Deebo Samuel trade happened at the combine last year. A ton of trades happen or start to be consummated during this process. So there's so much to get into this week, and we will do that. But today, I wanted to talk specifically about one item. But before we do that, as we always do, you know how we do things here. Let's get to some house cleaning. I hate the off season for various reasons. I always tell you it's lying season. Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man, Louie T. I tell you that be careful, be safe out there. It's not safe in these streets. Be careful. There's so much time. There's so much dead air, and people are looking to fill the space. And this is the type of shit that happens when there's nothing going on. Combine, please hurry up. Commanders, please sign Laremy Tunsil to an extension so shit like this doesn't have to hit my timeline. So apparently John Keim, who's like most of us who are trying to, fill the void, is trying to come up with some content. So, Keim's reaching out to people that he thinks, and again, I don't know what's what. I gotta roll with Miss Jackson. If anybody would know who's coaching her son, it would be her. And so, Keim's trying to fill the void of nothing going on. So he's trying to talk to people who are in the know. And so apparently he's had this guy on before, this Ryan Porter, who was Jaden Daniels' quarterback's coach in high school. Apparently he hasn't been, according to Miss Jackson, hasn't been his quarterback's coach since high school. But anyway, Brandon, who we've talked about on this show before, is on social media. There are a number of people who really cover the team on social media. They grab things from everywhere and kind of house it in one area. And Brandon on X is one of those people who does a really good job. And so he clipped about a minute of Ryan Porter talking about Jaden Daniels, and he needs to put some, like the quote there was, he needs to put on some more body armor, put on some more lean muscle. And Miss Jackson, got wind of it, and she's like, Miss Jackson is Jaden's mom, by the way. This is not his quarterback's coach and hasn't been since high school. Jaden trains with Taylor Kelly from 3D QB. Shaking my head. Please stop giving him a platform to speak. So she's basically saying, like, hey, John Keim, you got to stop interviewing this dude. This is not my son's quarterback's coach and hasn't been for quite some time. So, of course, there are people who vouch for John Keim. And again, I'm not choosing sides here because I don't give a shit. Honestly, I don't care about any of this. This is why the offseason sucks, right? But continuing on, George Carmi of Doug and Carmi, Big Doug and Carmi show, shout out to George, chimed in and says, someone is clearly lying, right? Like, he said, this is an interview from March 31st, 2025. Ryan Porter shared that he planned on working with Daniels in April, and he continues to talk about him, being Jaden Daniels' quarterback's coach. So Keim has had this guy on, Ryan Porter, before, and Miss Jackson responds to George Carmi, says, come on, George. If you think I heard this, then she says, I didn't. All I want is the appropriate person who is actually training my son to speak. Taylor Kelly from 3D QB. And FYI, he said a bunch of QB lingo. Again, when are people given the platform, they use it. So she's basically saying this dude is trying to essentially grab as much, he's trying to grab as much clout. He's clout chasing roughly. And he's grabbing as much clout as he can off the back of Jaden Daniels' name. And Ms. Jackson's like, I'm trying to cease all of that. Again, I have to believe her if I'm going to believe someone in this situation that he's not the quarterback. Who gives a shit though? This is the off season. This is why the off season is the off season. Yikes. Let's just move on to more pertinent information and things as we continue on this offseason. So over the weekend, and you're going to start to see things like this happen. You're going to see teams starting to negotiate with their own players, right? We talked about, and nothing has happened thus far that is a surprise to any of us. I told you guys that I expected Javonte Williams to go back to Dallas, which is why I didn't put him on the list of free agent running backs, because Dallas felt like they unearthed a gem. He's still relatively young. He played really well for them last year. There's no reason for him not to be a Cowboy. And as a matter of fact, the Cowboys agreed. They cut Logan Wilson, who they traded for last season. Jerry was just doing shit. Traded for Logan Wilson. Cowboys fans tried to swear up and down, he's the leader we need in that linebacker room. The guy barely got on the field, and they cut him, not even 6 months after trading for him. But they freed up the space to go ahead and do this. Dallas, and this is from Adam Schefter, Dallas and free agent to be running back Javonte Williams reached an agreement on a 3-year contract that includes $16 million in guaranteed money. So what is important here, and I don't like, this wasn't brought to your attention because Javonte Williams was on your radar, unless you're Ed, right? Shout out to our guy, Ed. Ed, wanted Javonte Williams, and, we knew that this was going to be the case. He was going to go back to Dallas. What's important here is the number, right? And essentially, he signed a 3-year, $24 million deal, $16 million of it guaranteed. Essentially, he signed the exact same deal we saw most of the free agent running backs 2 years ago get, the $8 million deal, essentially, right? The deal that Tony Pollard got to go to Tennessee, the deal that DeAndre Swift got to go to Chicago. So that's the going rate for a solid back, right? Javonte Williams is a solid back, $8 million. So I'm just trying to set the stage for what the going rate will be for the next level up, right? I would assert that Rachaad White is a step down from Javonte Williams, right? He's a step down. He's not a 1,000-yard rusher. Javonte Williams was last year. He wasn't even the lead back in Tampa Bay last year, so, or the year before that, for that matter. So I would say that Rachaad White is a step down. Javonte Williams, and I would say Travis Etienne, that's that next tier of running back. Right in there, that middle group. I would say Algier, Rachaad White. Let's see. I got the list of running backs in front of me right here. I would say Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Algier, Rachaad White are at that third tier. Then you have Travis Etienne. You have Javonte Williams, guys that are established that have rushed for 1,000 yards, second tier. And then the upper tier, the upper crust, if you will, of the free agent running back crop is Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker the third. Those guys are going to exceed, $10 million a year on a deal. And so I'm just looking at this as the baseline. If Javonte Williams got $8 million per essentially over a 3-year deal, so 3 years, $24 million. 2 of those years are fully guaranteed, right? Essentially $16 million. The same kind of deal we saw Javon Kinlaw get last year, right? Javon Kinlaw got the 3 years, $45 million, 30 of it guaranteed. So you basically first 2 years fully guaranteed, last year not so much, right? That's essentially what I expect this contract to be for Javonte Williams. If you're interested in one of these big name running backs, and I still contend that Breece Hall doesn't even make it to free agency. He's another guy that I expect. Like I said, the Jets don't have a lot. They don't have a lot. And when you don't have a lot, you clutch the things that you do have that are worth having. So they're not going to get rid of Garrett Wilson, and they're not getting rid of Breece Hall, even though teams were circling around those two like vultures during the trade deadline. Remember, the Jets were offloading everything. Remember, they traded away a ton of guys, Sauce Gardner and Williams, the defensive tackle. They were offloading, and everybody was circling. Hey, is Garrett Wilson available? Hey, is Breece Hall available? And they didn't trade those guys because I think they want to build around those two specifically on the offensive side of the football. So I don't think Breece is going to make it, but if he does, he's going to hit north of 12, maybe even $13 million per year. Kenneth Walker may slightly be under that. If there is no Breece Hall, and this is what I talk about, the dangers of guys getting contracts with their former teams or getting franchise tagged. The danger in that happening is then you push up the price of the next guy in line. So Kenneth Walker might be getting $11.5–12 million a year, right? As of right now. Because Breece Hall is going to be the pace car that gets 13 and 13.5, maybe even 14 a year, depending on the suitors in the market. If there's no Breece Hall, now Kenneth Walker's number can be allowed to be pushed up a bit, because now everybody that was in the Breece Hall market has to now scramble and go into and get into the Kenneth Walker, the third market, if they desire. The running back position, teams aren't willing to really overspend on the running back. They'll just go get one in the draft, right? So it's a little bit funky with the running backs. We'll see how it goes. But that's not the case at receiver or tight end. Speaking of which, we move on to something that happened today. Again, there are no surprises right now. Everything that has happened, we knew was going to happen, right? I told you Javonte Williams was going to remain in Dallas, which is why he wasn't a part of the conversations. I put him in the honorable mention kind of conversation because he's not going to end up here. He's going back to Dallas. I told you that Kyle Pitts was going to be franchise tagged. If they can't reach a long-term deal with him, he was going to be franchise tagged. He's too important to what the Falcons are trying to do with this new regime that's coming in there. Pitts showed last year, because I was hoping he had another, subpar year that would make the Falcons question whether or not he was worth the money. Well, he went out, he balled last year. He played really well, and he had some big-time games last season. He looked more like the guy that they drafted as a rookie that went over 1,000 yards than the guy that had been somewhat of a disappointment a couple of years there in the middle. So figured they were going to try to do something. Their new team president, Matt Ryan, loves tight ends, and he had already went to vouch for him. And so I figured this was going to happen. So this from Ian Rappaport today. The Falcons are planning to franchise tag standout tight end Kyle Pitts, sources say, keeping their playmaker in the fold on a one-year fully guaranteed deal worth more than $15 million. We talked about all of the different ranges for the franchise tag this year and how much it's going to cost. Potentially, like, those numbers aren't, guaranteed to be exactly the numbers that I gave you, but they're going to be somewhere in that ballpark, right? The hope is to work out a long-term deal rather than to tag. The two sides have until July to do it. So no surprises here. We thought Kyle Pitts would be off the board in terms of free agency. I'm not disappointed by this news because, frankly, we knew this was going to be the case. But what it does do is it officially does the thing that I figured it would do, which is it now accelerates the aggressiveness of a team like Washington if you're interested in an Isaiah Likely, in a Chig Okonkwo, one of these guys that is athletically gifted that can be a premier pass-catching tight end. You have to be aggressive now because with no Pitts, everybody that was in the Kyle Pitts market goes directly to Isaiah Likely. What you really would have preferred, like I said, the same thing with the receiver position, is Pitts be available and him not be your number one target. You go straight to Isaiah Likely, let everybody else fawn over Kyle Pitts and turn that into a, an auction of sorts where you go straight to Isaiah Likely and get that done. Now, all the Kyle Pitts viewers who were monitoring that situation go straight to Isaiah Likely because he's, to me, the next best available tight end. Now that potentially pushes his price up because, again, teams like the Titans have a ton of money, right? Teams like the Patriots. I don't know if the Patriots still have a ton of money. I think they still have some money. They spent a bunch of it last offseason, but there are enough teams that are like Washington has like the 7th most cap space or something like that, 6th or 7th most cap space available this offseason. So those teams that are ahead of Washington in terms of cap space, at least 2 or 3 of them are in the market for a tight end. We're not the only ones. And so it makes that situation a lot tougher to navigate. For those of us who want Isaiah Likely here, it's not going to be easy. And we're going to have to be aggressive. We've got to position ourselves at the front of the line when these conversations start being had on March the 9th. Like, some of these conversations are going to start taking place. Like, don't fool yourself. At the combine, everybody who's anybody is at the combine. Every general manager in the league is at the combine. Most of his lieutenants are at the combine. Every agent worth any weight in gold is at the combine. Every single important decision maker is at the combine, and the people that will be negotiating with those important decision makers should be at the combine this week. And a lot of these conversations start to take place at Indy, which takes me to my next conversation and the reason why I wanted to come chop it up with you guys very quickly. Laremy Tunsil. This is a very complicated situation because on one hand, this deal needs to get done very quickly. Right? This deal needs to get done as quickly as possible. We've talked about this. Adam Peters himself, after the season was done, in his exit interview, basically said, I learned from my mistake with the Terry McLaurin situation. We want to get the Laremy Tunsil situation done as quickly as possible. Just because he says that doesn't mean it's going to be done, right? Because he's not going to just give him a contract. It's got to be, one that he feels like is in the best interest of this team and their situation moving forward. Laremy Tunsil represents himself. I think we've had this discussion before, but for those of you who aren't aware, Laremy Tunsil does not have an agent. He is his own agent, similar to Bobby Wagner, right? The difference is Bobby Wagner was at the point of his career where he wasn't looking to break the bank. He was comfortable at the stage of his career where he was at, that he could negotiate these deals. And not to say that that wasn't the case because he had been his own agent for quite some time when he was negotiating, lucrative deals. But it was a lot easier to negotiate with a Bobby Wagner at this stage of his career because Bobby wasn't looking to break the bank. Just give me my 1-year deal, $8 million. We'll call it even and move on, right? Laremy Tunsil views himself as one of, if not the best left tackle in football. And after watching him here in Washington, none of us are at liberty to disagree. I thought he was hosed. I said this already, but when you lose, this is what happens, right? But I thought he was one of the best tackles in football last year. You can't convince me that he wasn't an all-pro. Tristan Wirfs didn't even play last season, hardly. How was he NFC all-pro over Laremy Tunsil? It was bogus, but that's nor here nor there. Tunsil is one of the best left tackles in all of football, and he wants to be paid like such. And so there's going to be a back and forth dialogue. I would love it if these conversations started this week at Indy, but there's no buffer. There's no agent there on the behalf of Laremy Tunsil to make this conversation and get to the ball starting to roll. Remember, Tunsil is over the age of 30, right? I think he's going to be 32 this year, if I'm not mistaken. That shouldn't be that big of a issue in terms of his age. Wherever he is on that scale, 31, 32, he's somewhere in that neighborhood. He's playing at a high level, and he keeps himself in great shape. We've seen, tackle is one of those positions that if you're in fantastic shape, you can play well into your late 30s, even into your 40s. We watch Andrew Whitworth do it. Trent Williams is on the verge of doing it. Lane Johnson is a guy that's played forever. He's going to play again next year. It's one of those positions, right? Jackie Slater, I know that's going back a ways for some of you. You have no idea who that is, but he played 18 years in the league. Bruce Matthews played a ton of years. If you're an offensive lineman and you keep yourself in great shape, you can play a very, very long time in this league. We just saw, I forgot the name of the damn tackle that was with Jason Peters. Played till he was in his 40s, right? I think he just retired maybe a year or two ago, right? Tight end is another one of those positions. Mercedes Lewis, I think it was playing last year. He's 41 years old or whatever. So Laremy Tunsil's age isn't a big deal, but obviously it's a part of the discussion. It should be a very brief part of the discussion, but it's a part of the discussion nonetheless. The part that makes this a bit tougher is Laremy Tunsil is his own agent. And while he's not the first guy, he won't be the last guy to represent himself, it does make for an interesting discussion because some crazy shit gets said in negotiations. And usually when you have an agent, he's not going to tell you all the crazy shit they're saying about you, right? Because teams are using certain things as leverage to pull your price down or to get it in a range that's comfortable for them. They could use you're not an all-pro, Laremy. You've never been an all-pro. You've been a Pro Bowler multiple times. You've never been an all-pro, but you're asking for all-pro money. You don't think that would piss Laremy Tunsil off to hear the team that he's looking to sign a long-term extension saying to him, you're not an all-pro tackle, when we all know he's an all-pro tackle? But that's the kind of shit that gets said in these negotiations. I think you have to then massage the situation properly if you're the Commanders, knowing that you're talking directly to the guy you're trying to sign an extension to. This is why I said that this one in particular is a little bit convoluted and complicated. Ultimately, I don't give a shit about any of this. And I don't think many of you out there care either. The bottom line is this needs to get done. And everything starts. You see the Cowboys just got Javonte Williams done. You're going to see a number of other teams who have pending free agents start to sign their guys. He's not a free agent, so there's no deadline or shot clock on this. Got to get this done before we have to use the franchise tag. He's still got a year left on his deal. But that was the Terry situation last year, and we don't want to go down that road again. So I really feel like, as much as we're going to talk about free agency and the draft and all this shit that Adam Peters needs to get done, we talked about this being an offseason that aggression is the key. And we've seen that with the coaching staff with Dan Quinn already and how aggressive they were and the things that they've done And we think that's going to bleed over into free agency and ultimately into the draft. And all of that is great. And that's what we want. This is the first domino that needs to drop if you are the Commanders. Get Laremy Tunsil Extension done. Get it out of the way. We don't want this going into, he's not showing up to any of the OTAs. Okay, he's not an OTA guy, wasn't in Houston, and he didn't show up last year after the trade. So I'm not worried and concerned about any of that. He wasn't coming anyway, whether he got the extension or not. They need to get this done as soon as possible, just for the sake of not having what happened last year to the season before it even got started. A lot of us feel like the season was derailed before they even snapped the ball once in training camp. The Terry situation tore that season apart from the inside. And if you are Adam Peters and you told us directly after the season that you learned from some of the mistakes, and look, there were a lot of parties involved, and there was enough blame to go around. You know, Terry and his camp had as much to do with that contract not getting done as Adam Peters and his camp. But Adam Peters even admitted, I should have engaged sooner. I drug my feet. I wasn't worried. And then by the time we really engaged with him, we were so far apart that the timeline just didn't fit. It didn't match. If you learned your lesson, then you should be executing those lessons learned this year with the Laremy Tunsil situation and getting this deal done. You've already made it abundantly clear that you would do that trade over again, that you have no regrets in trading for Laremy Tunsil. You know the cost. You see what we don't have in this year's draft because of it, and you're fine with that. So are we. It sucks not having a second-round pick, but I'd much rather have the bookend tackles, you know, and having your left tackle position secured than having a second-round pick that we've sucked at anyway for the last decade plus. And if something doesn't change about the 2024 draft, we would have sucked again in the second round. Oh, no, we suck again in the second round. For whatever reason, we don't get second-round picks right anyway. So I'd much rather have Laremy Tunsil. Get the deal done ASAP. And again, there's no shot clock on this. He's not going to be at OTAs anyway, so it's not a distraction. But the longer this thing drags on, the more of a distraction it becomes, the more PTSD starts to be conjured up. Last year was very, very triggering for most Commanders fans. It was a very triggering season. A lot of shit happened that triggered trauma responses from Commanders fans everywhere. So it was a rough year last year. We're starting anew in 2026. And if you want to start this new chapter the right way and keep the positivity flowing, get this deal done. Normally, these conversations start at the combine. I hope Laremy Tunsil starts the conversation. I hope the Commanders start the conversation. Somebody start the damn conversation now. Get the ball rolling now. It's so much easier for these conversations to take place right now than they are once you get in the dead heat of free agency. You're no longer the team's most important priority. Now I'm trying to get Isaiah Likely. Now I'm trying to go get Rachaad White and get him to agree to a contract on March 9th so that when March 11th rolls around, he can actually sign. You're no longer important. I push you to the back burner. Once the draft process really gets going, once we start talking about pro days and Adam Peters and his guys hit the road and they're at Ohio State and they're at LSU and Baton Rouge and they're here and they're there, they're at Miami and they're looking at all of these pro prospects. Once they're doing these individual meetings where they're lining up guys that are going to be undrafted, trying to sort that out, get those guys lined up. The guys that they're having for individual meetings, they're wooing these guys, taking them out to dinner, this, that, and the third. Once that process starts, Laremy Tunsil goes to the back burner. That's what happened to Terry last year. This is why this conversation needs to start now. And if you can get it done now, get it done now. Because in a matter of 2 weeks, Laremy Tunsil's extension becomes the least important thing. It's free agency, and then they turn their attention directly to the draft and that entire process. Then you don't come back to the table until May. Well, damn, you look up. If you're in May and you're far apart on a deal, we start going into that territory. You're wandering into that same Terry territory from last year, where all of a sudden we keep saying, well, it'll get done in July. It'll get done in July, right before training camp. It'll get done. And then the shit doesn't get done. I'm going to tell you right now, if it doesn't get done before March 9th, it's probably not going to get done until sometime in May. And that shit, again, little spooky for us as fans after seeing the way the shit went down last year. I highly doubt that they'll be engaged in this draft process, engaged in free agency, and then we'll just wake up one day and Laremy Tunsil just got an extension on March the 29th. I doubt it. It could happen. Obviously, it could happen. But like I said, the combine is the signal that the offseason is about to kick into high gear. Because now the calendar turns from February to March. And once you hit March, the start of the new league year hits. That's on March 11th. The tampering period starts on March 9th, which is when you can start to engage with these free agents and get them to agree to contracts. Once that period starts, the shit doesn't stop. The shit does not stop all the way until you get to the end of April and the draft being done. That's when it actually slows the hell down. And even the first day or two after the draft, these guys are working the phones trying to get these undrafteds to come to their camp, to sign with them. So it's not actually over until you hit May. Now you got rookie mini camps and there's so much shit going on. Before you know it, you look up and it's June. We don't want to do this again. Get this deal done. Get this deal done. ASAP. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to a quick word from our sponsor, come back on the other side, and then if there's some comments we need to address, we will. If not, I'll give you a quick update on programming update, and then we'll get out of here.
Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today.
Shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this stream. Sleeper has been fantastic all year long, all football season. As the calendar is about to turn to March, all eyes are on basketball, whether it's college or the NBA. And now that the season's over, Sleeper has also introduced new team picks on their app where you can pick a winner of individual games. That is a great addition to their app. And if you haven't already done so, check it out. I've told you that they've been doing a great job with the player picks. Now they have the team picks. They've been giving out boosts for the player picks. It was another 100% boost yesterday for the NBA. They continue to put out the boost. I assume that they're going to have another one tomorrow, a big one for the NBA, big slate tomorrow. If you haven't already done so, use the link in the description of this video. That'll take you to where you can download the app. Make sure it's available in your area and use my promo code LTN to get you 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. That's right. LTN is the promo code. 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. And man, I'll be honest with you. I've been killing it on Sleeper, and you can too. And they've been giving out all of these bonuses or these boosts to help your profit. Man, Sleeper has been killing the game this year. Shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this stream. Let's get to the comment section and see if there are any comments here. There aren't any comments. So here's what we'll do. We'll quickly go over the scheduling for this week because it's going to be a very fascinating week. So the combine officially kicks off the viewing portion on Thursday. You're going to have I think it's the defensive line, place kickers, and linebackers on Thursday. Friday will feature the defensive backs, corners, and safeties. Then Saturday, that's always the prime time showcase, quarterbacks, wide receivers. As a matter of fact, let me pull it up for you guys so you can see what the combine schedule will be this year. And because they switched it up, normally the offensive linemen go first. That is not what is happening. So let me pull up this combine schedule real quick and let you guys have at it, so we can kind of get the so we can get this scheduled. So I can tell you this tonight. I will be live tonight. So we're going to do our defensive free agency videos like we did with the offensive side of the football. We're going to do that tonight. So I'll be back live later on this evening. We'll dive into the combine, or excuse me, we'll dive into free agency for the defensive side of the football like we did for the offense. And I will give you my thoughts on, who I think the team is going to, aggressively go after, who I think they should go after, who I think they will go after, et cetera, what positions that they need to be aggressive at, what are some of the better positions in free agency on the defensive side of the football, so forth and so forth. So we'll do that tonight. This is the combine schedule for this week. So place kickers, defensive line, linebackers are Thursday. DBs and tight ends, that's what I was forgetting. Tight ends on Friday. So you got the corners, the safeties, and the tight ends all on the field on Friday. Then you obviously have the main attraction, the main event, quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers on Saturday. Ty Simpson is going to throw. He'll probably want to be one of the few big name quarterbacks to throw at the combine. Most of these guys don't throw anymore. He's trying to help his draft stock any way he can, try to solidify himself as a first round pick. We'll see if he's able to do that. To me, it doesn't hurt throwing the football. Even if you don't throw it well, we'll make the excuse for, he's not throwing to guys. He's, like, just go out there and throw the damn ball. All we want to do is see you spin it. We don't really give a shit if it's completed or not. But whatever. And then offensive line is on Sunday. They used to be first. I'm actually glad they're last because that last day is just brutal. I hate the last day of the combine. By the time you get to Sunday, I can only imagine how the people that are actually there, covering the event, those who are there doing their homework, I can only imagine how that last day must feel, that Sunday. Really the last day is Monday for them, but shit, that Sunday is just brutal. You know, I'm like at wit's end with the combine at that point. And the offensive line, I know they're essential to the success, but they're the worst combine watch. So if there's ever a day that you can skim on and you can like, look, just let's get this shit over with. It's Sunday. Kudos to them for getting it right and putting the offensive lineman last. Right? Get them out of the way at the end when nobody cares. So looking forward to that. But at the end of the day, Thursday, I'll be live, you know, after the combine to break down all of that, the D-line, linebackers, etc. Friday, we'll be live again, breaking down the defensive backs and the tight ends. That's going to be a big one because we might be in the market for a tight end. And, you know, we clearly are going to be in the market for a defensive back. So that'll be a big day for us. Hell, every day is a big day. We need everything, right? Except for Sunday. I feel like the offensive line day is the one day where they may draft an offensive lineman, but if I had to guess, I'd say if there was one position group that is a little bit further down the list of needs, it's offensive line. So these other days are going to be really essential for us to see what guys are capable of. I'm going to be interested to see who actually does what. That's always the one of the more interesting things about the combine is who's actually doing stuff, you know. But anyway, I digress. I have one comment and then we'll get out of here. Habibi's Collectibles. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, did you hear Kym's interview with the quarterback coach that apparently isn't the quarterback coach according to JD5's mom's post where she told Kym not to talk to him, LOL. Already talked about it on today's show. So you probably just got here not too long ago, which is cool. Glad that you showed up. Better late than never. But we spent the first 6 or 7 minutes of the show talking about it. So yeah, definitely saw that. And again, I hate the offseason for reasons like that right there, right? Where you're talking about some shit that has nothing to do with nothing. Who cares if he's his quarterback's coach or not? I don't give a shit. I really don't. Neither should you, honestly, but I can't tell you what to care about. But that kind of conversation right there is why the offseason is the worst. Anyway, I digress. You guys have a good one. Take care, and hopefully I will see you later on tonight for our defensive free agency preview. Gonna look at that side of the ball and attack it aggressively because shout out to everybody that responded to my video where I asked about whether or not it was more important to add to the defensive side or add around Jaden. I thought the answer would be defense for most of you, and it was. But shout out to y'all for, you know, responding. A lot of interesting comments by a lot of you. And this is why this conversation that we'll have tonight is so important, because a lot of you feel like the defensive side of the football is the most important thing for the Commanders to attack this offseason. Free agency is going to go a long way in helping them do that, especially when you only have 6 draft picks and only 2 of them are in the first 2 days of the draft. You're not going to get upper echelon elite talent on day 3. You might get a starter. You may get a guy that is a contributor. But you're less likely to find a star in day 3. And so you're going to look for some real help from guys who have already established themselves, who are ascending. Free agency is going to be the way you do that. So we're going to talk about that later on tonight. Anyway, you guys have a good one. Take care. And hopefully I will see you later on tonight. Adam Peters, you know what to do. Get this done ASAP. Extend Laremy Tunsil. Post up. Take command. I'm out.